everybody, welcome tonight to our effort to save democracy. You are here with us because you know the threat that American democracy is under right now, and you want to do something about it. Well, we have an incredible lineup for you. We're going to get to that in a second, but just a quick note. One of the easy actions that you can take right now, literally as you watch this, if you go to indivisible.org/live, maybe you're watching it there right now, there's a little button and it says upload a video. Or upload a photo, I'm sorry. That upload a photo button allows you to upload a picture of something that you're doing related to Deadline for Democracy, related to working to save this republic, to pass the For the People Act. So if you've got an action that you've participated in, a sign that you've been preparing for your upcoming action, whatever it is, you can upload it there. We're trying to build the moment around this democracy legislation, and that depends on you. So easy to do it. Go to indivisible.org/live and share with us what you're doing. Share with us what you're doing. So today we're going to be hearing from incredible members of Congress who are leading the fight for democracy on Capitol Hill. We're going to be hearing from an Indivisible group leader who's leading the fight in the state. We're going to be hearing from an Indivisible organizer who is going to tell us what you can do from wherever you are, red, blue, purple state, or district, does not matter. There is a role for you in this fight. That's the plan. I'm not going to filibuster for very long because we all hate filibusters. That's why you're on this call, right? We're trying to get rid of them.
It's true.
I want to say a couple things. Just, you know that democracy is under threat. That is why you are here. That is why you are with us tonight. You know that there is an avalanche of voter suppression going through GOP-led states, whether it's Arizona or Texas or Florida or New Hampshire. The Republicans are trying to voter suppress and gerrymander themselves into power. That is what they're trying to do. But we've got a solution to that. It's called the For the People Act, and it's supported by Republicans and independents and Democrats all across the country. The only folks who aren't supporting it are Mitch McConnell and a few people in the Senate. But the people want this. We know that people want it, and we're going to make our voice heard. Now, the enemy here in this fight, it's not Mitch McConnell. It's not any individual senator even. The enemy in this fight right now is time. The enemy is time. We have a limited amount of time to actually get this bill through the Congress. You talk to any elections expert in the country, and they will tell you, if we fail to get this done before the fall, it's going to be very difficult to implement some of the most important provisions in this bill, things like the anti-gerrymandering provision that we need to get done. So the enemy here is time. We've got a handful of weeks to get it done. That's why we're facing this Deadline for Democracy. That's the name of the campaign. That's what you're participating in. And there's nobody who I am more pleased to introduce than Representative John Sarbanes to tell us a little bit more about this bill. Now, Representative Sarbanes coming to us from Maryland. He was the lead sponsor of the For the People Act and is the lead sponsor of the For the People Act in the House. He conceived of this bill with advocates all around the country. He put it together. He marshaled the forces. He got it through the House once. He got it through the House again. This bill is a transformative piece of legislation, and he was the lead sponsor in the House to make it happen. So without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, Representative John Sarbanes.
Ezra, thank you very much. I think you're the man, the myth, and the legend as well, but I appreciate the opportunity. First of all, I didn't conceive of this. No Democratic member of Congress conceived of this. It was absolutely conceived by the people, which is why we built it for the people. This came directly from what people have been telling us for years they want to see, which is why, by the way, it's so popular across the country and across party lines, because when people look at it, they see everything in there that represents the change that can make a difference to their voice in our democracy. Let me talk about the bill in terms of its recent meeting of the moment. As we saw this voter suppression happening across the country over the last 3 months, people started to get very panicked. And they said, what are we going to do? And we said, well, we have a bill for that. It's called the For the People Act. And then we heard of plans, first, sort of secret plans on the part of the Republicans, but then plans they were very openly sharing to further gerrymander the country and get an advantage in Congress and try to take seats unfairly. And people said, my goodness, what are we going to do? And we said, well, we have a bill for that because the For the People Act addresses partisan gerrymandering. Then we saw big money stepping up again behind Mitch McConnell and the Republicans, the dark money pouring in to try to tilt things in the wrong direction. And people said, my goodness, is there anything we can do about that? And we said, we have a bill called the For the People Act. It responds to every threat that we face right now in our country when it comes to keeping our democracy strong. Let me talk about what happened last Tuesday, because that was a big day in Washington. That was the day we got 50 Democratic senators unified, indivisible in their declaration that we have to move forward, that this is too important for us not to keep moving forward with the For the People Act. On that day, we had the president, the vice president, the Speaker of the House, the majority leader, and those 50 Democrats all saying it's not over. Failure is not an option. Inaction is not an option. These are quotes from all of those folks, including Joe Manchin, who has said inaction is not an option. So on Tuesday, we showed that there's this appetite to move forward on the part of every Democrat in Washington. We also saw 50 Republicans standing against our democracy. So the battle lines were drawn very, very clearly. And even though it was not articulated explicitly on Tuesday, if you have 50 Senate Democrats saying we have to move forward, if you have the president saying we have to move forward, and you have 50 Republicans standing against it, when the required vote under the rules of the Senate is you need 60, then implicit in all of that is that we have to change the rules so that we don't need 10 Republicans to get this done. So I think the realization is dawning on everybody here that there's got to be a change in the rules to protect our democracy. What happened in the last 3 weeks? 3 weeks ago, an op-ed was written in West Virginia, and everybody said it's time to pack up your tents and go home. It's over. But for some reason, the people of the country did not agree. You did not agree. You did not give up. You keep showing up and saying, we can see the summit. Don't tell us we can't get to the top of the mountain. And within 48 hours after that op-ed appeared, the energy began to reassemble. And every Senate Democrat can feel history bearing down on them, that this is the moment where they have to stand up and do the right thing. When John Lewis stood on the Edmund Pettus Bridge and saw troopers on the other side with billy clubs, he didn't give up. When Martin Luther King was in Memphis in 1968, and the judge said, we're going to issue an injunction, Dr. King, in his last speech, the mountaintop speech, said, we're not going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, we're not going to let any filibuster turn us around. That is the moment that we are in. As Ezra said, we are down to crunch time. This is the home stretch. That's why this is a deadline for our democracy. We have to get this done in the next few weeks. We cannot adjourn for August without getting this bill across the finish line and onto the president's desk, because the changes that we want to see have to begin getting implemented now if they're going to make a difference for the 2022 midterm election. So we are absolutely on a shot clock here. And I want to thank everybody on the call, because the energy is rising, the temperature is going up. For the next 2 weeks, the Senate is going to be home this week and next week. This is your last chance to get to them before they come back to DC to make the final moves on this bill. So we need you to lean in. We need your voice to be clear. We need the chorus to be strong. Thank you for getting us to this point. It has taken years, but we are within reach of saving our democracy at this critical moment. Thank you so much. And let me just say, it is a privilege to be here with my partner in democracy, Mondaire Jones, who you will hear from shortly, who got here just in time to be part of the team that's going to get us across the finish line. Thanks very much.
Representative Sarbanes, thank you so much for joining us tonight. That was great. We have over 250 Deadline for Democracy events already scheduled, already planned, some already underway, some that took place today. These are in process. People are making their voice heard all over the country. You heard from Representative Sarbanes. You heard from him. We need the chorus to be strong. We are facing this real deadline. We need to pass this bill in the coming weeks. Otherwise, we can't implement it. And you heard what he said, what other senators are saying, other representatives and senators are saying, that failure is not an option. Inaction is not an option. We know that we are headed towards the deadline for this fight to come to a conclusion. We are going to find out whether Congress is ultimately going to pass this bill or not. It is their job to pass the bill. Make no mistake. It is the senator's job to pass it. It is the president's job to sign it. It is our job, all of us from all around the country, it's our job to make them do it. That is our role, and that's why we are all here. So just another reminder, one very easy step that you can take is what these folks right here did right now that you're looking at. Upload an easy picture. What are you working on? What are you doing in the states? What are you doing in your communities to actually fight for democracy? Let us know. We have 250 plus events already scheduled. You are part of this. You are not alone. This is not being led by the people you're watching speak right now, whether me or anybody else. It's being led by you, and we need to see you. Another person it's being led by, though, and I just could not be more thrilled to be introducing him, is Representative Mondaire Jones. Now, Representative Jones has been in the Congress for fewer than 6 months. And in that time, he has already catapulted to become one of the lead spokespeople for democracy reform in the House of Representatives. We see him out there fighting the subversion of our democracy. We see him out there fighting for campaign finance reform. We see him out there fighting for court reform. He, among other things, is a great follow on Twitter. I highly recommend it. He has spoken very persuasively, very inspiringly about the power of the campaign finance reform provisions in the For the People Act. The kind of campaign finance reforms would allow candidates like women and Black people and people of color who do not have access to the same wealth to actually get in the game, to actually run for office and have a chance of winning, have a chance of taking on folks who are backed by big money. So enough of me. I want you to hear directly from Representative Mondaire Jones. Representative, welcome.
Well, thank you, Ezra, for that very generous introduction and for your unapologetic advocacy for the People Act. Thanks as well to my brother in democracy reforms, Congressman Sarbanes, and to all of you tuning in at Indivisible. You are at the heart of the movement that will protect and reinvigorate American democracy. And make no mistake, our democracy is in crisis. The insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th made that clear, right? 2/3 of House Republicans made that even clearer when just hours later, after nearly dying alongside me, they voted to overturn the results of last year's presidential election. In the months since that fateful day, the crisis confronting our democracy has only grown more clear. In states across the country, as you well know, Republicans are working to pass racist voter suppression laws like those already passed in Georgia and in Florida, and soon, probably, in Texas. Already this year, more than 400 voter suppression laws have been introduced in nearly every state house across the country. The far right is only getting more brazen in its effort to unravel our democracy. Thankfully, as you've also heard, we are not powerless against those efforts. To stop these threats to our democracy, we can and we must pass the For the People Act immediately and intact. The For the People Act would register an additional 50 million people nationally through automatic voter registration. It would end partisan gerrymandering of congressional districts, as you heard. It would also help root out the influence of big money in our politics. And be clear on this, it is the only bill that would undo the voter suppression laws that have already been enacted in the states that I've mentioned. As a leading champion of this bill in Congress, I was proud to help get it passed in the House back in March. And for more than 3 months, the For the People Act has now been stuck in the United States Senate. Just this week, last week, the Senate finally held a vote. And while every single Democrat voted for the bill, it failed, due, of course, to the Jim Crow filibuster. In this moment, it has never been more clear that we need to abolish the filibuster, or at the very least, reform it, so that we can do what we were elected to do, and that is pass the For the People Act through the Senate on a simple majority vote and send it to President Biden's desk for his signature. It is up to us to make certain that last week's vote was not the end of our fight for the For the People Act, but rather the beginning of this next phase that we're in right now. Because despite what Mitch McConnell would have us believe, we know that now is not the moment to give up. Now is the moment to show that the American people will not compromise with corruption, racism, insurrection, and minority rule. And now is the time to organize your friends, your coworkers, and your neighbors to let members of the United States Senate know how important it is to pass the For the People Act uncompromised. Let me say that again. We must not compromise in the pursuit of a bipartisan deal that is never going to materialize. A compromise bill would enable Republicans to compromise our democracy. Right now, it is especially important for us to fight for the parts of the For the People Act that some people are all too comfortable setting aside. And now I'm talking about campaign finance reform. As John Lewis once insisted, I did not march across the bridge at Selma and almost lose my life to become part of a political system so corrupt that it pollutes the very idea of what we marched for. We need to make sure that our politicians listen to us, the people, not just their biggest donors. We need the small dollar matching program in the For the People Act. Today, our broken campaign finance system gives the wealthy a megaphone and silences the rest of us. In 2016, just 400 mega donors contributed a total of $1.5 billion, more than every small dollar combined. Congress isn't just funded by wealthy people, it's full of them. More than 50% of lawmakers in the 116th Congress had a net worth of over $1 million, compared to just 3% of the American population. Instead of a Congress, we have a country club. And this is no accident. Our broken campaign finance system is rigged to favor wealthy candidates. I experienced firsthand in my own run for Congress how important it is that we fix our broken campaign finance system. When I was considering running for office, the first question political insiders asked me wasn't what I would be fighting for, whether my community was behind me, but rather how much money I could raise. My leading primary opponent never had to answer that question. As the son of a pharmaceutical billionaire, he didn't have to raise any money at all. Instead, he spent $5.4 million of his inherited wealth to blanket the airways with TV commercials 3 months out from the primary election. In the general election, I faced yet another self-funding candidate who outspent me by pumping $1.5 million into his campaign. It was against these long odds that I was elected to Congress. As an openly gay, Black, working class candidate whose community sent him to Congress, I am an exception to the rule, but I should not be. With the small dollar matching system in the For the People Act, candidates like me could become the norm. As a result, small donors would matter, fixing the toxic power dynamics fueling the assault on our democracy. Small dollar matching has already transformed New York politics for the better. The donors in New York City elections, which have a matching program, are by far the most racially and socioeconomically diverse than the donors in the New York State elections, which don't. The For the People Act would take that transformation nationwide. The same goes for candidates, as you've also heard. Candidates of color disproportionately rely on small donations. But because big money drowns out small donors' voices, we typically raise less money than our opponents. Thus, we are often prevented from even making the ballot. By multiplying the power of the people, candidates of color rely on most. A small dollar matching empowers more people to take their seats at the table. For at least the decade since Citizens United, we have promised that when we have the chance, we Democrats would fix our broken campaign finance system. And now today, with the For the People Act, we are finally here. It's time. If the Senate fails to follow through, again, if we compromise with corruption, we risk confirming many Americans' beliefs that billionaires and corporations have captured both parties, that our elections offer no real choices, and that our democracy is a swamp in need of a strong man to drain it. We are, therefore, in the fight of our lives. And this fight obviously will not be easy. We know that. But fights worth winning rarely are. And we have already made such great progress. Consider this. At the start of this month, Senator Manchin published an op-ed in which he stated his opposition to the For the People Act. My office, my colleagues, like our incredible leader, Representative Sarbanes, and all of you at Indivisible fought back. And together, we brought Senator Manchin back to the table. Not only did he issue a counter proposal, but he voted to open debate on the For the People Act. We just stand one vote away from having all 50 Senate Democrats support this version of the For the People Act that we passed in the House. One vote away. Without you, none of that would have happened. And I have no doubt that together we can and we will pass the For the People Act and secure a government of, by, and for the people for generations to come. So thank you for all that you do, and please, let's go save our democracy.
Representative Jones, thank you so much for that. Taking everything we know that is the threat to our democracy right now, the 400 plus voter suppression bills across the country that have been introduced, the power that this bill in particular has to address those laws, to ensure that people actually have the right to vote in states across the country. And then the impact of campaign finance provisions on the entirety of our political system to ensure that it's difficult for billionaires to buy elections. It's easier for you to vote. It is easier to conduct elections in a way that ensure that foreign powers can't interfere with them, injecting ethics into our politics and taking corruption out. There's a reason why this is popular across the political ecosystem. There is a reason why Republicans and independents and Democrats love this bill. The only folks who don't love this bill are Republicans serving in the US Senate. Those are the folks who are opposing it. And there's a reason, because they understand it's a threat to the power that they have built through illegitimate means for years. That is why they are fighting this. But this fight isn't over. This fight isn't over. And as you said, now is the time. Now is the time. We're up against the Jim Crow filibuster, as you said. We're up against the Jim Crow filibuster. That is nothing new for voting rights legislation. That's what John Lewis was up against too in 1965. That's repeatedly what reformers have been up against. So the fact that we have these anti-democracy zealots fighting voting rights laws, welcome to America. And this fight is always hard. This fight always dies 1,000 deaths before we ultimately succeed. And it's because of leaders like Mondaire Jones and leaders like the Indivisible group members all across the country fighting this fight now that is going to make success possible. And not sometime in some distant future, but now. So as a reminder, one thing you can do right now, speaking of now, this is the moment we're in, tell us what you're doing. Share a photo, click that button. If you're at indivisible.org/live, if that's where you're watching this, click that button, upload a picture to show us what's going on in your neck of the woods. This is built by normal folks all around the country. We see this in New York that just went by. We saw folks standing up and asking Senator Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, in the filibuster. We see folks all over the country in every one of the congressional districts, whether it's in New York or Arizona or West Virginia or California, we see people standing up and making their voices heard. And what we know is that Congress is coming back in July. They're home now, but they're coming back. And what they do when they come back is going to be based on what they hear from you, what they hear from you. And this is what it looks like, what you're looking at on your screen right now. Normal, everyday people, not professional activists, not just politicians. These are people who are around the country who understand democracy is under threat, and they're standing up to do something. And that's what has to happen in this moment. That's what always happens anytime real change comes. That's what always happens anytime real change comes. And so I am really pleased to introduce our next speaker, who is leading the fight in her own community out in Michigan. Sherry Mason, who is a group leader from Indivisible Huron Valley out in Michigan. Now, this is a red, for folks who don't know the geography, this is a red part of Michigan. And yet her Indivisible group is one of the most active Indivisible groups in the state. One of my favorite stories from early on Indivisible, they had this really bad representative, wasn't showing up, wasn't doing a good job representing them, was more responsive to Donald Trump than he was to them. And they held an empty chair town hall. Of course, that representative didn't show. So instead, they had a live chicken on stage to represent that representative. That's brilliant, to demonstrate in creative, funny ways exactly what is at stake and who is actually being represented in Congress. It's you. So figuring out to center the fact that constituents want this, that representatives who are not doing this are chicken, they are not doing a good job of actually representing their constituents. That's the goal. And Sherry's going to tell you a little bit about what this bill means to them in Michigan, where there have been 39 voter suppression bills at the state level introduced. So without further ado, Sherry, welcome to the Deadline for Democracy campaign.
Hey, well, thank you, Ezra. I really appreciate being here. As Ezra said, I'm one of the leaders of Indivisible Huron Valley, and we're in the 11th Congressional District in Oakland County, just west of Detroit. We helped flip our congressional seat from red to blue in 2008 by sending Haley Stevens to Congress. And we like to believe that putting pressure on a Republican incumbent like that chicken on the podium made a difference. When I say we have an active Indivisible group, I'm really referring to what has been the core of our mission as a chapter from the beginning, and that's voting rights, to make voting easier, and ending gerrymandering to make elections fair and more representative of the will of the people. Our members collected petition signatures to get Proposal 2 on the ballot in 2018. Prop 2 passed overwhelmingly and sent a clear message to our Republican-controlled legislature that Michiganders in both parties want district lines drawn by a citizen-led commission, not by politicians. S1 has a federal mandate to prevent gerrymandering, and this will add power to the current process we're going through right now to implement the state initiative that we worked so hard to pass. We also collected signatures and went door to door to pass Proposal 3, no reason absentee voting, and an expansion of vote by mail opportunities that made it possible for Michiganders to vote safely during the pandemic in 2020. There were several parts of that proposal that made voting more accessible and equitable in Michigan. Sadly, as Ezra has mentioned, all of that is at risk because we've seen 39 voter suppression bills being introduced in Michigan right as we speak. Unnecessary ID requirements, reducing the number of drop boxes, limiting absentee voting opportunities, and probably the most dangerous bills are the ones that limit the power of the Secretary of State and the local clerks, putting the legislature in charge of the outcome. These bills will particularly impact rural, elderly, and marginalized communities in Michigan. S1 will help mitigate the damage these bills may have on our state. You're probably wondering, well, don't you have a Democratic governor that's going to veto those bills? Yes, we do, and yes, she will. But without going too much into the weeds, it's important for people to know that in Michigan, we have this quirky loophole that allows our legislature to go around getting the governor's signature, as amazing as that seems. As we speak, a ballot initiative is being written that will include the most egregious parts of the voter suppression bills. If this campaign obtains slightly more than 300,000 signatures, the legislature can write a bill that copies the ballot language, pass it into law without the governor's signature. Republican leadership has already publicly announced that this may be their plan. Like many other states, we in Michigan feel like our democracy is being threatened. We know it's being threatened. And as indivisibles, we don't want to see our efforts be unraveled by legislators who are completely ignoring the voice of the people. And even those in their own party, like the Republican Oversight Commission in Michigan that just declared our 2020 elections without fraud in this state. The For the People Act will go a long way in helping us hang on to our 2018 victories. Our Indivisible members have just made registering new voters a priority. We registered over 1,000 high school seniors in 2019 in our group, and we're expanding that effort for next school year. Until the pandemic, we had a group of dedicated indivisibles who drove to Detroit several times a month to register brand new citizens right after their swearing-in ceremony. Elizabeth Warren said, "Voting is the heartbeat of democracy." And quite frankly, it breaks my heart to think that these new voters, so excited to use their right to vote for the first time, might be intimidated or discouraged from doing so, just because Congress was unwilling to make S1, the For the People Act, their #1 priority. Our statewide Indivisible group is trying to do their part to let our senators know we appreciate them co-sponsoring S1, but we also want them to be willing to do whatever it takes to get this done, including filibuster elimination or reform. We rallied up north in Traverse City, Michigan this past weekend, and we're going to be rallying again in Ferndale, right on the Detroit border on July 6th. The stakes are very high for us in Michigan, so I can't thank you enough for letting me appear tonight. Thank you.
Sherry, thank you so much for sharing everything that you're doing in Michigan to fight for our democracy. I don't think I need to remind everybody who's watching this right now that the fight going on in Michigan is, yes, about democracy in Michigan, but don't forget how crucial Michigan was in the fight for all of our democracy in the 2020 election. We can't afford to lose voting rights in Michigan and Georgia and Arizona and Texas and Florida and Pennsylvania and New Hampshire. We can't afford that as a country. So if you are watching this right now and you're hearing what Sherry is doing to fight for democracy in her state, I hope this is inspiring you to ask yourself, okay, what can I do? What can I actually do to contribute to this fight that's happening in these states where democracy is under threat? Maybe I'm seeing these GOP bills pass in my own state. Maybe I'm in a blue state and I want to understand what I can do, but how can I actually be part of this fight? Well, one thing you can do immediately is what I've said earlier. Go, if you're watching this at indivisible.org/live, click that little button that says upload a video or upload a picture. Upload a picture of what you are doing with your groups, what you are doing in your own communities. We need to see you. And as you'll see from these pictures that are going across your screen, this is happening everywhere. This is happening in blue states. This is happening in purple states. This is happening in red states, in rural communities, in urban communities, in exurban communities. There are over 250 events so far that have been planned. Is there one in your area? Great, show up. If there's not, figure out how to pull some friends and family together and put some pressure on your senators. Get some attention, make a fuss, get into some good trouble, as Representative John Lewis used to say. Now's the time for that. We've heard how Sherry Mason and her group in Michigan is doing this work across the state. We need that happening in Michigan, but we need it happening everywhere. We need surround sound for senators in this 2-week period so they know when they go back in July, failure isn't an option. They've got to act. And yes, sure, that means co-sponsoring the For the People Act, but it also means, as Sherry said, doing everything in their power to get it done. Do not give us excuses, pass the damn legislation. That's their job. And again, it's our job to tell them that and hold them accountable. So how can you actually participate in this fight? You've heard from Representative Sarbanes and Representative Jones and Sherry Mason about the importance of this bill and the importance of working on it right now. But what do you do? Well, I'm excited to introduce you to Kat, who is Indivisible's senior regional organizer covering Arizona and Utah and Nevada. She's been advocating for voting rights for 8 years. She's registered over 2,000 folks. She's been part of the Indivisible team for over a year. And what's she here to talk to you about? She's here to make all of this talk about policy and stakes and turn it into concrete actions to tell us what we can actually do. Kat, take us away.
Thank you, Ezra, for that introduction. I'm Kat. Although I call Arizona home, I'm joining you from sunny Las Vegas, Nevada, on the land of the Southern Paiute people, to talk to you a little bit about why S1 means so much to me, and to also deeply thank you all, and just let you know how grateful I am and how many of us here at Indivisible are so proud of the advocacy you've done to gain support for the people, but also ways you can take action now. I have been waiting to vote for almost a decade, despite registering thousands of people to vote. It is a privilege that has been restricted to me, but I will continue to fight for this right. And I hope you will all continue to fight with me for people like me. The For the People Act would allow me to vote for the first time in my life, as well as re-enfranchise hundreds of thousands of people who have been denied the right to vote despite being contributing members of society and taxpayers. If S1 passed, it would strengthen Congress's commitment to update and restore the full protections of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. I know many of you are very concerned about upcoming redistricting and the restrictive voter suppression bills that have been passed at the state level. But to echo what Representative Jones said, if we can get S1 passed, this will halt gerrymandering by requiring states to use independent commissions to draw congressional district lines. And S1 creates new safeguards against improper purges of the voting rolls. That means that many voter suppression bills that have been passed in places like Arizona and Georgia that are set to purge voters will not happen. Currently in Arizona, we're looking at purges that could disenfranchise over 120,000 people, predominantly communities of color. We need For the People to pass to protect our community's ability to vote. I know we can do this. We will do this. And you are not alone in your fight, no matter where you are located geographically or whether you can vote or not. We need everyone to take action right now. And here are some calls to action that you can take over the next couple of weeks during this recess. First, please check out our website. You can go to deadlinefordemocracy.org to find an event that's happening near you, to get involved, to get active with an Indivisible group in your area. If you don't see an event, please register one, reach out to us. We are more than happy to help you and give you resources to get an event on the map and get you active to save our democracy. Second, please call your senators daily if you can. I call Senator Sinema's office 3 times a week just to make sure that she knows that I'm counting on her to do the right thing, that she needs to continue to push on every Democrat and Republican that she knows to get this bill passed and to deeply reconsider her stance on the filibuster. Even if you have a Republican senator, they need to hear from you. So please call them. You can dial 844-909-0232 to be connected. We'll drop that information for you as well. Third, you can help Arizona push cinema if you live in the following states: Alaska, Maine, Louisiana, Utah, Ohio, West Virginia, Indiana, Kansas, North Carolina, and South Dakota. Even if you don't live in those states, you can still help. We're planning our own Indivisible G20 kickoff call. If you have not heard of the G20, it is a group of 10 Dems and 10 Republicans that are working to come up with legislation that can get passed. Senator Sinema sits within this group, as well as a lot of politicians that we know are still movable with the right amount of pressure. We hope that you can help us, and definitely tune in if you're wanting to help us find a way around the filibuster. We will have several speakers to talk about the other democracy reform bills that are urgent, as well as S1. But if you have friends or family who live in these states, please encourage them to take action and join the phone call that's happening on July 9th at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We have a great strategy to put pressure on cinema, but we need your help to make it successful. Lastly, if you're doing all these things, please take a photo of yourself, of your group taking action. Tweet that photo to yourself with your senator tagged, with a sign that just says, "I support for the people. Please support it with me." Encourage your friends and family, those folks on social media, to take action. Use the hashtag Deadline for Democracy, and let's get as many people as possible to see that this is our democracy and we are about to lose it if action isn't taken immediately. Thank you all for everything that you have done and will continue to do to work towards a better democracy for all of us. I'm with you no matter what, and we'll continue to fight back, because it's not just about me or my family, it's about all of us and our equal right that we should have to vote. Ezra, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you so much. I think of everything that we know Indivisibles are doing all around the country right now. And what I know is that it's not just Indivisible groups. Look, I'm talking to you as Indivisible's co-founder and co-executive director, but we know as part of the Deadline for Democracy, this includes the Declaration for American Democracy, a massive coalition of pro-democracy folks from all across the country. This includes Citizens United, includes SEIU and CWA. It includes Sierra Club and 350.org. It includes Stand Up America and Common Cause. Just about every national organization that cares about democracy is part of this. Just about every group, even that isn't focused on democracy but understands democracy is at stake, is part of the Deadline for Democracy. The reason why they're part of it is because they understand now is the time. If we are going to have a representative democracy that actually reflects the will of the people, that responds to the people, and not just to the big money interests, not just to lobbyists, but actually normal Americans across the country, if we're going to have that ideal in our representative democracy, now is the time. We have a bill. It's called the For the People Act. It's passed the House. It has 50 supporters in the Senate. We need to get over the Jim Crow filibuster. That's nothing new when it comes to Voting Rights Act. What we know from past fights is that the way that this gets done is not that representatives and senators just stand up one day and decide, I'm going to do the right thing. No, that is not how hard things get done in Congress. The reason why we get hard things done in Congress is because people like you watching this right now stand up. We've seen these pictures all tonight. If you're watching at indivisible.org/live, you can click submit a photo. Take a picture with your puppy, take a picture with your cat, take a picture with your kids. Show us what you are doing in your community. We are building this from the ground up. And it's important that representatives see this, that senators see this, that the political ecosystem at large sees this. Because if they see and hear from you, and if that message is clear, they will respond. That is how Congress works. That is how Congress works. They respond to pressure. We apply the pressure. And that's why we are participating with our partners across the political ecosystem in this campaign, in this Deadline for Democracy. So you've got your marching orders from Kat. You understand the opportunity in front of us. It is now up to you. We are here to help. You are not alone. This is happening all across the country. Again, as Kat said, if there's an event already happening near you, join it. If there's not an event happening near you, get creative. Figure out a way to put pressure on your senators. Figure out a way to get attention for your democracy. This is up to you, but we're in this fight with you, and we are going to win. Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. We'll see you out there.